topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Powerful Business Strategies, where you will find out that everything you have ever learned about growing your business is wrong. Finally, a show where you'll learn the right way to grow your business by learning business and financial strategies that your competition isn't doing. And now, here is your host, President of Next Step CFO, Michael Barbarita. And joining Michael for today's show as an executive moderator is Chucky Obia.
Yes, this is Chucky, and I believe that gratitude is undefeated and growth is about the next step. It is an honor for me to moderate today's discussion with my good friend, Michael. Michael, how are you?
Great, Chucky. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well.
So as Chucky said, my name is Michael Barbarita. I'm president of Next Step CFO, and Next Step CFO is a fractional CFO and strategic implementation firm. And our vision is to ensure overwhelmed business owners achieve the time freedom and consistent profits to build a legacy and the life they desire. And our mission is dedicated to guiding small business owners to leveraging their time, exploding their profits, and build a meaningful legacy. You know, this show, Powerful Business Strategies, in our book of the same name, is a step towards accomplishing that vision and mission. And so with that, I want to hand it back to my co-author and moderator for the show, Chucky Obio.
Michael, thank you. So I am energized by today's episode. 7-step pathway to profit formula using the 80-20 rule to get your time back. This goes right to the heart of the mission and vision statement, Michael, that you called out, this
That's
idea
right.
of legacy and leadership for business owners. So before we really jump in, a quick disclaimer. So Michael and I are both affiliated with a number of different organizations. I currently serve as the managing director of business development for Vedder Price, a global business-focused law firm. But in addition to that, it is truly inspiring to collaborate with Michael on a business roundtable that we do coast to coast for business owners. And we document best practices from business owners across industries. And then we document that in our book called Powerful Business Strategies, also the name of the show. But please note that the views expressed on this show are our personal views. But my mission as the fearless moderator is to ask the right questions to help you and to help me learn the best business strategies that the competition isn't doing. So, Michael, look, really energized for today's episode.
Likewise, Chucky. And so our show today is about working your way toward getting your time back by
Yes.
utilizing what we call the 7-step pathway to profit formula, using the 80-20 rule to finally get your time back.
Nice.
And, you know, in the mid-'80s, I bought a ski specialty retail business. And when I bought the business, I never skied before. And when I bought the business, I was 27 years old and didn't have any experience running a business. And I needed something or to do something to be able to accelerate my learning curve and really understand what was going on in the business, to be able to talk intelligently to my employees who, quite frankly, knew way more about the business than I did. And I was way behind the 8 ball, having a lot of sleepless nights, wondering what I got myself into, and I was making a lot of mistakes. It's unbelievable. Feeling like totally out of control, and losing the respect of the employees. I mean, I was struggling with not knowing anything about the business and certainly not knowing anything about the ski business. And the employees needed direction and leadership, and I wasn't giving it to them. And I was getting more and more frustrated with my lack of knowledge about the business, and it was affecting employees who were leaving and who were equally frustrated, and it was affecting the business that was now struggling.
Mm.
And you see, at the time, I was trying to make sure that the business would survive, but I was overwhelmed, exhausted, overworked, frustrated. And then something really bad happened. while all this distress and my mismanagement was going on, to top it all off, I caught an employee stealing right out of the cash register.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I'll tell you, that's when it really hit bottom. Which told me I really couldn't manage the business correctly. I really had to do something to right the ship. And as you can imagine, I was really in bad shape and desperate, but I wasn't going to give up on my dream of finally being in control of my business and my destiny. And this is when I started to look at things that I should focus on in order to leverage more revenue. And that's when I learned about the 80-20 rule and how to use it to leverage more revenue. And so business owners overall, from the ones we've interviewed, Shuki, are just so overwhelmed because there's just so many things they have to know and understand about running a business. It's endless. And just as an example, in our book called Powerful Business Strategies, we have this little pie chart that has layers of things that we business owners should be at least familiar with, if not actually understand and know. And this pie chart has subcategories of subcategories. And if we took out just one sliver of the pie chart, it was a real tiny sliver called digital marketing. Then business owners have to know about social media, email marketing, blogging, copywriting, e-commerce, paid ads, search engine optimization, data analytics, conversion and optimization, videos, squeeze pages. I could go on and on for days and days. It's just so overwhelming. And this is the overwhelm that I was looking at when I was in the my first days in the ski business. And so the question becomes, with all these things we business owners have to know, what should we focus on to get the biggest for the buck and to get the most leverage? So I turned to the 80-20 rule, commonly referred to as the Pareto principle, that says that 80% of the consequences comes from 20% of the causes. And to put that in business vernacular, most business owners think that the 80-20 rule as it relates to business is that 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the customers, which by the way is true. But the way I looked at the 80-20 rule and the way I broke it down is that 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the effort. So the trick is to identify what tasks make up that 20% that drive 80% of the revenue. And Shuki and I, when we wrote our book, broke this down to what we call the 7-step pathway to profit formula. I didn't have that terminology back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. So Shuki and I put a name on it when we wrote the book. And once again, we talked about that 20% being the 7-step pathway to profit formula. And so what we did is identify the tasks that make up that 20% that drives 80% of the business that you do, drives 80% of the revenue. And I'm going to explain each step one at a time.
Great. Michael, I was just going to say, I'm so fascinated by this because, as you know, I mean, this is personal for us. And not just for us, this is personal for a lot of business owners and leaders. I go back to the 27-year-old Michael, right? I mean, Michael, which is really impressive that at such a tender age, right? I mean, you had this great drive and initiative to venture out on your own. Let's take a minute there, Michael, because I think that's really important because the why sometimes can be very informative to get to the how. So why at that tender age, Michael, did you embrace this path of entrepreneurship?
Well, first of all, I wish I was at that tender age again. Because the age right now I'm at is not so tender. So, but the main reason was, Shuki, I didn't like the politics that went on in corporate America. That was the main driver. And I was getting promoted in my jobs that I held at a reasonable rate. Don't get me wrong.
Nice.
I just had a little. I had a little forward-looking view.
Okay.
And of what I thought or I anticipated what was to come, and it just didn't look fruitful enough for me. And like I said in my opening, that to reach, to want to reach that destiny, to want to go above and beyond, to want to accomplish, and really build something. It takes business ownership, and it's a great path. But there's some things like we're going to go over within this show, not just this show, but in all of our shows, that hopefully will help guide people and not to go through the agony that I went through.
Yeah, I mean, that's just so inspirational, Michael. And so the point about the effort piece of this, right? I mean, effort is everything, right? It's funny. Effort is a great equalizer. So when you look at this 7-step profit formula, I would be very interested, and I know you're going to go through this methodically. And Michael, I think we'll have some questions from the audience, but I would be very interested at how the 27-year-old entrepreneur would have implemented on these 7 steps. Do you think it would have accelerated the business growth? Would it have gotten you closer to the destiny? I would so love your perspectives on that. But yeah, feel free to continue.
Well, one of the things is I really sat down and really tried to find where the drivers were.
Interesting.
And that's what these 7 steps are. They're the drivers that drive the revenue, and they drive it in a very leveraged way. If one focuses on them, if one doesn't, then they basically go back to what you're doing now, for the most part, because we've interviewed a lot of business owners and we've seen a lot of overwhelm.
Absolutely.
And we see them working on things that aren't moving the needle. But if you focus on these 7 steps, I don't think you can help but move the needle. So let me go through those. So step 1 is you need to work on it and focus on generating more leads. Now, preferably through the conversion formula. Now, we've talked about the conversion formula before, and I'm going to go through it again because it is absolutely critical to the first couple of steps of this 7-step pathway to profit formula. The conversion formula plays a key role in the first 2 steps. So let me explain the conversion formula again. And so, as we've been saying in a few of our shows, the key to successful marketing is that you have to enter the conversation taking place in the head of the prospect. Well, how do you do that? So what we observed, Chucky and I, when we were writing our book, is that you can enter the conversation taking place in the buyer's mind because it's centered around 2 things: the problem the prospect has and doesn't want, and the solution that they want that they can't find. And we simply enter the conversation in the buyer's mind strategically by using what we call the conversion formula. Now, here's the thing about the conversion formula. It's a 4-part formula that allows you to address the prospect's problem and solution and do it at just the right time, just like if you were in the prospect's mind. And it has to be followed just like any other formula or mathematical formula, if you will, with all 4 parts executing in the right order. Otherwise, it falls apart, doesn't work. So here's that formula very quickly again, in review, what we've talked about in other shows. The conversion formula starts with what we call the captivate. That's the headline, which happens to be the problem that the customer has and doesn't want. And it's designed to stop the prospect in their tracks because it is addressing the problem. And it interrupts them, if you will. And this headline or problem is the first thing that you say out of your mouth or that a person sees or hears from you or your business. And it must really identify the problem they have. Because you basically only have a few seconds to keep their attention. So it's really got to focus in on that problem. And then fascinate, that's the second step of the conversion formula. Now that you've interrupted the prospect with the problem, we have to keep their attention and we have to engage them with the subheadline or the second thing that they see, which happens to be a quick solution to that problem that they can't find. And this is how you enter the conversation the prospects are having in their minds: the captivate and fascinate, the problem and the solution. And so the third, now that you have their attention, and by the way, we call these first 2 steps of the conversion formula, the position of market dominance. So you need to get that position of market dominance right, that captivate and fascinate, that problem and solution. You have to get that right. Now, then once you get that right, you now have the time to educate the prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, based on that, we have more time to give that prospect more information about how we go about solving that problem. And then finally, the close. That's the fourth component of the conversion formula, and that has to be very compelling and so irresistible that the prospect would be foolish not to take it. And we'll go over that in a minute, the irresistible offers. But so let me show you how the conversion formula does the heavy lifting by following the way people buy. And people buy based on emotion and then back up that emotion logically. You see, if we break down the conversion formula, the first two components, which is the problem the customer has and doesn't want, and the solution they want that they can't find, that touches the prospect's emotion. And then the educate, which goes into a little bit more detail on how that problem is solved, that's the logic behind making the purchase. And then, of course, then there's the close. So you see how the conversion formula actually follows the path to which a buyer buys. They buy emotionally and then back that up logically. The emotional triggers is the captivate and fascinate, the problem and the solution. The logical trigger is the educate. And then you hit them with the close. So step 2 of the 7-step pathway to profit formula is focusing on conversions. Now that I have my lead, how do I convert that lead into my sales process, whatever that process is?
Absolutely. And Michael, before we really opine on step 2, so a couple of really quick questions. So step 1, applicability across industries. So it seems like what they're saying, and I'm consolidating a couple of different questions here. So it seems like they're saying, would this apply across industries? And the answer to that would probably be what, Michael?
Yes, absolutely. You have to, these 7 areas that you must focus on that leverages 80% of the revenue, they cover every industry. I don't know of an industry that they don't cover.
Great.
And, as far as step 2 goes, where you're focusing on conversions, this is how you convert that lead, which is step 1, generating more leads, converting that lead into your sales process. And whatever that sales process is. And so the conversion formula helps you get through step 1 and step 2, because if you identify the problem and solution, the prospect wants to know more, and that's where the educate comes in, and that's the conversion. And so you're getting them into your sales process, and that's converting them from a lead into the sales process. Now, keep in mind that the conversion formula doesn't have to be just through digital marketing. It could be a networking scenario. It could be a radio ad. It could be a newspaper ad, a billboard, and of course, all forms of digital marketing. And, we've actually had a couple of clients, Chucky, who even put their position of market dominance, the captivate and fascinate, in their incoming voicemail message. Or a live operator even taking an incoming call. So that's really it can be in any form of communication with the customer. Step 3 of the 7-step pathway to profit formula is focusing on closing rates. Now, once again, the conversion formula comes into play by utilizing the 4th component of the conversion formula, which is the close. And the close needs to be compelling. And I don't like to talk about that. I don't like to talk about the close needing to be compelling without reviewing the 4 components of a compelling offer. I'm sorry, the 5 components. 5 components of a compelling offer. So in order to close, which is the 3rd step, and you need to focus on these things. Now, remember, we have leads, conversions, and closing rates that need to be focused on. To help you with your close, your offer needs to be compelling. And so 5 components of the compelling offer is number 1, scarcity and urgency. Now, scarcity is when you proclaim that there's a limited availability of your product. For example, there are only 3 hairbrushes left. That's scarcity. There's only a few left, so they better hurry and buy whatever's remaining. Urgency is when you put a time limit on the offer. You know, when I was in the ski business, our most successful sales were 4 days that would start on Thursday and end on Sunday. In one of those sales, we consistently did $1 million in business in 4 days because the deals that were not only great, but there was urgency in getting there in those 4 days, and there was the intensity of scarcity, because when those key products, those focused products run out, that's it. It's over. You can't get them anymore. So I should say those promotional products. When those promotional products run out, it's over. So urgency and scarcity was really something that we paid attention to in retail, because that's really that attracted a lot of attention. And then there's the risk reversal, where the seller takes all or most of the risk. And I usually give my ski guarantee example here, but I have construction clients that give 5-year warranties on their work. And these guarantees are real differentiators, because most people in the construction business, they don't even guarantee their work for a year. Yeah, and these guarantees, like a 5-year warranty on construction work, that closes a lot of sales. And the other day, I actually heard an ad for a psychic service. This is a service that predicts the future. And they said, if the prediction that they make does not come true, you get your money back.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bold guarantee.
Talk about a risk reversal. I couldn't believe my ears. I had to hear it a couple times, but yeah, that was what they said. So that if they said if the prediction that they give to the customer doesn't come true, you get your money back. It's just unbelievable. But that's a risk reversal, and that's pretty compelling. So the third component of a compelling offer is adding low cost but high value to a product or service. Like, for example, here's an example. A toothpaste company would put a QR code on their tube of toothpaste that leads to a video that shows people 4 areas inside their mouth that are most neglected while brushing their teeth. And the best way to brush those areas. So information is a wonderful way to add more value, and that's a perfect example of that. And then the fourth component of a compelling offer is packaging and bundling multiple products and services together. A package provides a strong perception of value. And then finally, the fifth is indifference to the outcome. The prospect can tell when you're pressing to make a sale. And as a result, they surmise that you don't have their best interests in mind. And that's a problem. That's a real problem. So by being indifferent to the outcome, it puts you and your prospect on the same side of the table. And getting to know the person in terms of their inspirations, goals, and objectives helps with this process. And then step 4 of the 7-step pathway to profit formula is to focus on client retention and customer retention. And by the way, Chucky, what I found in our interviews is this is one of the most neglected steps by business owners, because when they get a customer, and I do the same thing, when we get customers, we take it for granted that once they're a customer, that we'll have them by default and keep them. But nothing could be further from the truth. We have a saying at Next Step CFO, you're only as good as the value you brought in your last meeting.
Wow. Michael, look, break that down further. I think that's a really insightful point.
Yeah, well, what that means is if you're not adding value or working towards adding value with every delivery of product or service, then you run the risk of losing the customer.
It's a good point.
You got to continuously add value and work towards adding value. When you think about it, no matter how established a brand is, they always strive for product improvement or whether it's product or service improvement. I mean, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, they all have huge research and development departments spending millions of dollars.
Good old R&D.
R&D, right? That's all adding more value. That's all. Yeah, that's not standing still and just expecting the customer's going to keep buying from you.
Absolutely. It's interesting. There's a comment here, a quasi question, Michael. Just this idea of the rejection that comes with trial and error, right? So you might try something that doesn't work in the marketplace, and as a very busy business owner, how do you contend with that, right? And if we sort of contrast that with like a large Fortune 500 operation where they've got a whole, like you said, R&D department where they're just churning things out. Some things work, some things don't work. A small business owner may not have that luxury. So any reactions to that?
Right. The big companies have all these, I don't know, firms that they hire to get all kinds of market research, and we small business owners don't have that luxury. But what we do have the luxury of doing is testing. And when and the beautiful thing about testing is you don't have to test your entire market. You just have to test a few customers.
Yeah, a subset of that market.
Yeah, that's all. It's not like when you're testing, you have to, well, in order for us to really find out if this is really adding more value, we have to try it with everyone and commit to everyone. You don't. That's the beautiful thing. You can test it, whether it's an ad, whether it's a messaging, whether it's the conversion formula, whether it's a market position of market dominance. Yeah. You can test it, but you don't have to test it full scale. Just test it with a few customers, see what the reaction is. And so, I think that's something that we small business owners can certainly do. And other ways to retain clients and customers is giving them calls to see if you can provide any assistance. Showing your gratitude, even in one form or another. It's just another way to keep that customer. We just can't take customer retention for granted. And as you probably have heard from many, many, many in the past, it's much more cost effective to keep an existing customer than to find a new one.
Absolutely.
Step 5 of the 7-step pathway to profit formula is focus on increasing the average dollars per sale.
Okay.
Some of the key strategies for increasing average dollar per sale is a strategy called bundling and packaging. Now, we talked about bundling and packaging as one of the components of a compelling offer, and it is. Yes. But it also can be applied to increasing the average dollars per sale. And here's how I increased the average dollar per sale when I was in the ski business. Every ski retailer in America bundles skis, bindings, and poles to create what is called a ski package. And it's definitely effective, but everybody does it. Well, what we did when I was in the ski business is we took the colors of the most popular ski packages and created color-coordinated clothing packages of a parka, bib, sweater, and hat. So once the customer bought their ski package, which is usually the first thing they went and bought, we then showed them the color-coordinated clothing package, to which now their skis, bindings, poles, and outfit are all color-coordinated. But then, of course, we sold them color-coordinated ski boots and the color-coordinated gloves, and even, if you can believe it, color-coordinated socks, despite the fact that the socks were hidden from sight, covered by the ski boots.
Yeah.
But they still wanted to make sure, because when they took their boots off in the lodge, they wanted to make sure that their socks were still color coordinated.
I love that.
So you can imagine, by doing this, by adding this package of clothing that was color coordinated, we dramatically increased our average dollar per sale. Now another strategy is upselling and cross-selling. Upselling, and when I say another strategy to increase the average dollar per sale.
Okay.
Upselling means offering like a higher grade or quality or size of an item that the customer may be interested in at the point when the customer is ready to buy. So let me explain upselling a little bit. There are many people, many customers in the world that feel compelled to upgrade. These are people who always buy the highest grade of gasoline.
Okay.
These are people who always fly first class.
Okay.
You know, these are people who always buy the best an industry has to offer. And they're not necessarily millionaires. They just feel like they're missing out if they don't buy the best. And because you don't always know if you're dealing with such a person, you should always upsell a customer to the next level up.
Right. Give them a chance to say yay or nay, right?
Right. To that next level, because they might be that customer who needs to buy the best, who wants to buy the best, who feels compelled to buy the best, who feels a fear of missing out if they don't buy the best.
Yeah. As always, do not negotiate for your customer or your client before the sale, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And then cross-selling, which simply means offering products or services which complement the item the customer is interested in. Once again, at the point when the customer is ready to buy. And the clothing package strategy that I just gave you also is an example of cross-selling.
Yeah.
You know, we're just selling across to another department. So if you notice when describing upselling and cross-selling, I always make the point that these upselling and cross-selling opportunities should be presented when the customer is ready to buy, right at the point of sale. Because the reason for that is that 34% of prospects will buy additional products or services at the time of their original purchase if they're asked to do so.
Michael, I mean, that is so insightful. I think it's worthy of emphasis, right? You said 34%.
Right.
Wow.
And I'm saying, if you don't remember a single thing that I said today, please remember that one statistic, because it provides a tremendous opportunity to increase the average dollar per sale that you make with each customer.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, and this 34% has been tested over and over again. And it to be true. It is true. And step 6 of the 7-step pathway to profit formula is focusing on increasing the frequency of sale.
Okay.
How often can you get a customer to buy? And this can be accomplished by creating loyalty programs with rewards, sending personalized marketing campaigns based on purchase history, offering limited time deals, and proactively reminding customers when they might need to repurchase based on their usage patterns. And rejuvenating former customers is another one of those strategies that's neglected by business owners. Through our interview process, we found this to be true. These are people who have previously bought from you. Why not provide special offers and additional products or services to these customers who already know and trust you? They've already purchased from you. It's a strategy that is really effective and many times neglected. So rejuvenating former customers, I talked about, don't forget what I said about the 34%.
Yeah.
Don't forget about rejuvenating your former customers. It's a tremendous opportunity for people who already know you. They already trust you. They've used your service. For one reason or another, they've drifted, but you can bring them back.
Yeah, Michael, it's a really important point, and it's also practical, right? So I recall from a number of our business roundtables, Michael, we had some business owners that were just literally nodding, like they were nodding their heads, right? I mean, they were just like in vigorous agreement on that. Now, one of the challenges with rejuvenating former customers is having a good customer database or
good
some
point.
kind of a list where you keep in touch with customers. Did you want to maybe react to that, Michael? And some insight?
Yes. When I was in the ski business, we had 80,000 we had 80,000 named customer list. And
wow.
The reason is that every time they bought, and at the time there was no email, but But every time they bought, we got their name and address, and we put it on the sales slip. And then we took the sales slip and we added it to the database. And so every time you make a sale, you must get the customer information, including their email address now. And by doing that, you now have an opportunity to market to them again and again and again and again. And it's really important that you rejuvenate those former customers and that you maintain that database. Because without the database, it's hard to rejuvenate. So the final step, step 7 of the Pathway to Profit formula, is focusing on how you control your costs. Both variable costs, which are the costs directly incurred through the production or delivery of the product or service, and what's commonly found in the cost of goods sold section of your P&L, and fixed costs, which are also operating expenses like rent and insurance that are, for the most part, the same amount every month or every year. And in most businesses, the largest part of their operating expense base, this is for the most part, fixed costs, is rent, payroll, advertising, and insurance. If you focus on managing just these 4 expenses, it will provide you the biggest bang for the buck when managing your cash flow and when managing your costs. So once again, that's rent, payroll, advertising, and insurance.
Okay.
Now I'm going to talk about each one and how we could go about saving money in each of these areas, or what you should look at. First of all, rent. You know, business owners think it's literally impossible to renegotiate rent because they have a lease. But the landlord doesn't want to lose a tenant, especially a commercial tenant, where they would they'd have to do another build out for another tenant and deal with all the costs associated with vacancy. And most landlords understand cash flow problems because many of them experience cash flow problems themselves through real estate downturns. But what I found to be the best way to negotiate with the landlord is to show them your financial statements and show them what concessions you need in the short term based on the financial position of your business. And in that situation, you do have to put your hat in your hand.
Okay.
And I've done this successfully myself. And I show the landlord how we're going to pull through the difficult time and how the rent concessions are necessary in order to pull through. Now, if you're not having a difficult time, then you don't go about doing this. You do have a lease that you must honor. But if you are going through a difficult time and you need to cut the rent, then by showing all your cards to the landlord, put your hat in your hand, and really showing them showing the situation you're in now and how you're going to pull through. Most landlords will play ball, and that's the thing. And by the way, a business and cash flow forecast is invaluable in that scenario because that shows the future, of how you're going to pull through.
Exactly.
And if you have to, you can add the concession money that the landlord gives you up front to the back end of the lease, or you can add another year to the lease as a way to give the landlord something in exchange for the concession.
Okay.
But whatever you do, don't think it's impossible to discount or defer rent just because you have a lease.
Michael, is there a right time to have that conversation with the?
Yeah, I think if first of all, if you have a business and cash flow forecast, you'll know in advance.
Okay.
Okay, that that there's trouble ahead, trouble brewing. Some business owners can right now expect trouble brewing, if they're starting to see some softness in their business. But otherwise, when you're experiencing the pain of a cash flow problem, or you really believe that in order to continue in your business, you need some rent concessions. That's when you go. That's when you go do it. But it's great to have your financials and a business and cash flow forecast to be able to show the business owner the landlord how you're going to get out of it.
Nice. Yeah, kind of the 2-step process.
Right.
Yep.
And then there's usually always ways to cut payroll, whether it's laying off employees or reducing employee hours. I mean, certainly you work to keep your A players and let go of inferior players. And in retail, another strategy to cut payroll hours is to change the store's operating hours and closing times, tighten them up. That way, if you could tighten them up to 8 hours, 8 to 9 hours, like we did at times, that's just like one shift, and it's easier to deal with, and it's easier to manage and schedule, and it cuts payroll. And then advertising, I just don't like cutting advertising, but there are ways to cut advertising without it making a dramatic impact on sales. And if you've been tracking what works for you, then of course you'll know what to cut by eliminating the advertising that's not working. But other ways to cut is reducing sizes of ads, changing 4-color to 2-color, maybe running radio spots, condensing it from 60 seconds to 10-second ads, maybe even changing the radio's time spots, where you might do a couple of more overnights to try to reduce the cost. But if you haven't been tracking your advertising, then shame on you, because it's difficult to make uneducated choices on where to cut advertising, and it poses a great risk. And then insurance. Yeah, start with health insurance. Get quotes from 4 health insurance providers. What I found is that although rates are basically the same, you'll find one creative provider out of the 4 who will figure out a way to cut your medical insurance costs to the lowest possible amount. And you may have to reduce the employer paid portion and put more of the cost burden on the employees. But one thing that works very well for my clients, especially, is they have younger employees, and you can increase your deductibles. And you can increase the deductibles, and then if the employee reaches that old deductible amount, you can reimburse them for the overage, because for the most part, young people don't hit their deductible. And then, from commercial insurance, you get 4 commercial insurance providers. Commercial insurance carriers get very competitive and usually sharpen their pencils on general liability policies. And if you have an umbrella policy, you can reassess the need to continue that, as well as get competitive quotes on those. And let me give you an example of a client I helped. I had a client in the construction business that had an umbrella policy that was costing them $17,000 per year. However, the reason they were having the umbrella policy was bidding on huge commercial jobs. Now, in the previous year, they didn't win not one of any of those large commercial jobs. They weren't even close. And to be honest with you, large commercial jobs was really not part of their market that they would compete in. It wasn't their sweet spot. Their sweet spot was mid-range jobs that, didn't require to carry an umbrella. So we dropped the umbrella and saved $17,000. Yeah. And most business owners wait until there's a downturn in their business before they assess the size of their overhead.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that, Michael. That's the stream of questions that we've been getting on this is, I would say I would classify a number of these questions under the category of timing, the timing to have these kinds of conversations, right?
Right.
So
that's absolutely, yeah.
So your take on that, Michael, is that like be proactive as a business owner, right? Don't wait till the roof is sort of caving in.
Yeah, well, with respect to insurance and advertising, that should always be looked at, always. So you don't have to wait till you're in trouble for that one. Insurance and advertising really needs to be looked at constantly, And let me end with this, Chucky, because I know we have to leave time for compliments. That's the 7 steps that'll leverage your company revenue. That I know what you're saying out there. What about all the other things that I have to do? I can't just focus on these 7 things.
Exactly.
Well, what I have to say for that is something we called Chucky and I call AIDCO. AIDCO is the
Yes.
mnemonic. And when you need something done, look to A, automate the task.
Mhm.
Look for I, innovate, find a creative way to complete the task.
Mhm.
Or D, delegate the task to an employee. Or C, cancel or eliminate the task if it's unimportant. And
Mhm.
finally, O, outsource the task to a subcontractor.
Yeah.
Focusing on the 7-step pathway to profit formula in conjunction with AIDCO will finally get your time back. And Chucky, just before I hand it off to you, I do want to review those 7 steps again. So it's step 1. This is the 7-step pathway to profit formula that'll leverage 80% of your revenue. This is that 20% that that leverages 80% of your revenue. Leads, conversions, closing rates, client retention, average dollar per sale, frequency of sale, and costs. Time for compliments, Chucky.
7 steps. Great segue into compliments, Michael. And look, this week's business compliments segment, 5 business owners that we want to highlight. First, and these business owners, by the way, they're coast to coast, so national representation here. So Trevor Lawton, co-founder of Abyssinia, and Michael will probably help me with some of these pronunciations. But look, they are a biotech company working on groundbreaking technology to cure Alzheimer's. Trevor Lawton and team, hats off. Drew McGee, based in the Midwest. So Trevor's out in the East Coast. Drew McGee and team are out in the Midwest. They are with IVM Group. Kind of a strategic and thoughtful approach. They have marketing expertise and solutions just for insurance vendors. So they've taken an industry specificity approach to really contextualizing how they support insurance operators and vendors. So really intriguing there. The third, Tom Sado, Midwest based. He is, and look, I marvel at this title that he has and his scope of responsibilities. He's a director at the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies. And Michael, I've got to share their mission statement. This just blew me away. So they've got this mission statement to ignite the entrepreneurial spirit for the students, faculty, university staff, alumni, and the greater university community. So they're igniting and activating the entrepreneurial spirit across their different stakeholders.
That's terrific.
Chad, yeah, really, really cool. So Chad Beauregard out in the East Coast with Arborway Tree Care. They are a full-service, locally owned and operated tree care company. And they've been doing this work for over 4 decades. But even better than that, Michael, they've got, to your point about guarantee earlier, they've got this sort of guarantee where projects always end on time.
Right.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
Jeff Silver, last but not least, the Silver Group. These are real estate sales professionals out in the East Coast, New Jersey, PA. Really incredible professionalism that they bring to every single engagement. I love what Jeff and team say. So they create a personalized plan for clients using a proven system. So great compliments all around. These 5 business owners, hats off. Michael, back to you.
Thank you, Chucky. Real quickly, too, last week we talked about solving cash flow problems. One thing that I just wanted to quickly touch on was customer deposits. If you're having a cash flow problem and your customers, you can ask your customers to pay a deposit up front or prepay the whole price for a discount. I have a client who was taking 1/3 deposit for his services. He increased it to 50% and he dramatically improved his cash flow. And another client who gave a client a 2% discount if they paid for the entire order up front. That also worked as well. So Chucky, to get a copy of the book, Powerful Business Strategies, simply go to our website, www.nextstepcfo.net. It's totally complimentary. And until next Monday at noon Eastern Time, for Chucky Obio, I'm Michael Barbarita. And remember, don't keep doing what your competition is doing.
Great job. Thank you.
You have been listening to Powerful Business Strategies, finding out that everything you ever learned about growing your business is wrong. Tune in next week and every week at noon Eastern Time on W4CY Radio with your host, Michael Barbarita of Next Step CFO and moderator Chucky Obio.